Hi there. It's been a long time since I've been able to talk to you all. So much has happened. And because of that, I feel like it may be important to start at the beginning, or at least a little bit farther back. So, for those of you who don't know why I began my walk, I'd like to share my story with you. And I'm very emotional, so I've already started crying. I want to tell you, I was sick, extremely ill for many years, close to 9 years, with one thing after another. I had an autoimmune disorder that just caused a cascade of other illnesses, and I had started a journey of healing on my own about 5 or 6 years ago. Because nothing else had worked for me, and so I began to heal my body naturally with nutrition and plant-based medicine, and to meditate and pray and walk and garden and do a lot of introspection, a lot of looking within. And in time, I got better and better and better. And about 3 years ago, I had cancer. And that really kind of upped my game. It pushed me, maybe it was 2 years ago, it pushed me into a new level of urgency in terms of really looking within and really healing my emotional wounds. I needed to forgive myself. I needed to learn to love myself. I needed to find peace. And when I did that work, I saw extraordinary results. And when I found peace with myself, I had peace with others. And when I learned to love myself, I fell in love with the world. And in February of 2014, I woke up one morning at about 5 a.m. with the energy of a child. It was as if suddenly I had my full health. I had all of the energy and strength and joy that was available to me. Almost as if I'd never had all of it before. There'd always been a barrier between me and health and vitality. And suddenly I had it. And this was an extraordinary experience, and I began to celebrate. I laughed for months. I just couldn't believe how beautiful the world was, and how everything that I had always held in my mind, anything that I had resented, anything that I had believed had hurt me, had really just been a matter of perspective and simply could be let go of. And I just did let it go. And when I let it go, I realized that the only thing that had ever stopped me from healing was myself. So I had all of this energy, and I had all of this freedom and joy. But after being sick for so many years, I basically had no money, and I didn't feel like I could go back to my old life. Being ill in America is financially devastating. Basically, you can't have money and have an extended illness. It doesn't work, unless I guess you are an independent multimillionaire. But if you're an average person and you become sick, you're guaranteed to be financially devastated. So I didn't have basically anything. But the good news was that that didn't bother me at all. But I had to decide what to do with myself. And because of what I had discovered about peace, and because of my joy and my desire to share my love, I needed to figure out a way to share it. And I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't explain it. I really wasn't in a position at that point to write a book or whatever. That wasn't really right for me at that time. But I could walk. I had my body. And I could walk my talk. I could go out into the world and live it. And so that's why I decided to take my walk. And right away, right out of the box, it was the most extraordinary experience of my life, the most rewarding, fulfilling, challenging, and beautiful experience of my life. I started right away climbing mountains and connecting with people. Everywhere I went, connecting with people on this incredible level of love and sacred unity. Everywhere I went, I saw in everyone's face the face of God and a reflection of myself. And I had the most amazing journey. I walked through mountains, climbed mountains. I walked through the desert. I walked through the jungle. I saw the most beautiful vistas, and I had the most loving, profound relationships of my life with people I just met, complete strangers. I hold them still, every single person, in my heart. And that has been what has gotten me through. In November, I was hit by a car in Mexico, and I was in this little city, and I didn't really get good health care there. It was a long, complicated story, but I wasn't able to get a full examination there. But it appeared that I was fine. It appeared that despite having been hit by a speeding car, I was in great shape. And so I continued. And then after about 1,200 miles of walking in February of this year, February 11th, one night after the most beautiful day, in the most beautiful year of the most extraordinary life, I had an extreme medical, physical crisis. And I knew at the time that I was dying. I was very clear that night that this was it, that I was dying. And I decided to let it roll. I decided that was the perfect end to the perfect day, to the perfect life. But to my surprise, that night I had a near-death experience where I left my body and I was speaking with, my soul was speaking with other souls that weren't in bodies about my body or my human aspect. The interesting thing is I kept saying, is Phoenix dying? Because it seems like she's dying. And they kept saying, yes, she's dying. And yet there were these 4 tribal elders sitting around a kettle drum. And they were drumming fiercely, 2 by 2, 2 by 2. Boom, 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 boom. And I knew that they were drumming for me. And the interesting thing is when you're not in your body, you don't really care about whether you live or you die. So I knew that they were drumming for me, but I didn't know, were they drumming to keep me alive, or were they drumming to welcome me over to the other side, or why? I just knew that that was for me, and I didn't question it. But to my surprise, I woke up the next day alive and called an ambulance and went to the hospital. And because I looked so good, so strong, they did not realize how sick I was. Now, the chances of surviving an aortic rupture to the extent that I had are 2% per hour, which means that an untreated aortic rupture, after 2 days, I really should have been dead. And there is just no record of anybody ever surviving the 2 months that I survived. But anyway, at the hospital, they misdiagnosed me with food poisoning, and they discharged me. And I couldn't get better. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel better. And so I kept going to walk-in clinics. And I went to another doctor, and the other doctor, reasonably enough, because the symptoms match very closely, misdiagnosed me having pesticide poisoning, not food poisoning. So we were going down this road for a long time, and it was the wrong road, and I wasn't getting better. And I was just about to give up the walk when I was invited to come back here to Corpus Christi and get some help getting some more medical tests. And in hope that I could figure out what was wrong and not have to abandon my journey, I came here. And I demanded a CAT scan. Thank goodness. I said, well, I'd had cancer, I'd had uterine cancer. It was the only test that I hadn't gotten done in these other clinics. And the good news is all the other tests had been, like, my kidney was working fine, my livers was working fine, my blood levels, everything looked great. Shockingly, because I was in extraordinarily critical condition. But I looked and felt incredible for somebody who should have been dead. When we did the CAT scan, it was basically only of my lower area, but they saw the tear in the aorta at the lower level, and just that amount alerted them to the seriousness of the situation. And so I went to the hospital, and when I went to the hospital, I knew that it was very serious, but I didn't know how extraordinarily complicated and dangerous the situation was. And I looked great, and I was admitted immediately into the ICU, but I looked fine. And I was given then a full CAT scan, and at the full CAT scan they discovered that the tear had gone from my heart all the way down. The entire aorta was ripped, and I had been walking around like that for 2 months. Really inexplicable how I survived. But I was in good enough shape that we were able to assemble a top-notch team of surgeons. And on April 13th, I went into surgery, and I had been informed that there was very little chance of me surviving. But I kind of just knew that I was going to survive. There was very little chance of me having been able to survive. There was negative a gazillion percent chance of me having survived up till that point. So what are percentages? What importance was that? When I went into the surgery and they opened me up, they discovered that my heart itself had also been damaged, and I needed a triple bypass. But they had to get an artery from my leg, and because I'd been walking around for 8 weeks with a leaking aorta, it had kind of collapsed my veins, and it was very difficult to find a good artery to use. And during the surgery, I died many times. I coded many, many times. And it became a battle, a 7.5-hour battle to keep me alive. And they did it. I had O-negative blood, and that's the rarest blood type, and they couldn't find enough, and they ended up having to use a different blood type, different blood for me, which normally would kill me, and yet I survived that too. In the course of the surgery, 7.5 hours, I gained close to 100 pounds, 80 to 100 pounds in water, as they had to keep doing blood transfusions and all the saline, and my body was just basically swollen, and that in and of itself was pretty deadly. But I survived. While I was in the hospital, I went through some very, very extreme suffering. I'm going to be sharing the details of this in upcoming days, and it is, in fact, where my path is leading me now, where I'm going next. But I want to share with you one of the things that was very important. I had been in a great deal of distress and pain and suffering, and I had been praying to God, God, please help me, help me, help me, help me. Take this from me. Help me. I can't do it. And I'd been praying for hours, and nothing had happened. No change had happened. I didn't feel any better. I didn't get any help. And it occurred to me that if that was the case, then this must be what God wanted for me. Then this must be what needed to be happening. Because though my small mind may not understand it, I have faith in the infinite consciousness, the all-encompassing wisdom of God, which is infinite love, and infinite love cannot be wrong. And so I understood that whether I could know why or not, this was right. And so I surrendered. And I said, all right then, if this is what has to happen, I am here to serve. And so I surrender whatever you want from me. And if you want me to suffer, whether I understand why or not, I have faith that there must be a good reason. And I agree to serve you and to surrender to your will. And at that moment that I surrendered, I was filled with light, and I was filled with complete understanding. And I'm not talking about words, I'm not talking about thoughts or concepts or beliefs or opinions. Pure understanding, pure knowing was given to me, and I understood why I was there, why everything had happened in the way that it did, why I needed to suffer, what my purpose was, and how I was going to serve, what the path ahead of me was about, what my purpose is here. And in the months ahead, I'm going to be focusing on that. Now, I have, in the past weeks, needed to focus on just simply surviving and healing my body, and I've been on a lot of painkillers that have altered my consciousness and made it difficult for me to communicate. So I haven't been able to make a video, but I am now getting to the point where I'm off the painkillers most of the time, and my mind is getting much clearer. And I will be communicating about this mission, about what's ahead, the new path. I also believe that someday I'm going to finish this walk, but I will tell you right now it's going to take at least a year for my body to recover. And this other path that is ahead of me is more important right now. But I will keep in communication about that. I was also given understanding of the essential nature of existence, of the universe, of the human experience, of everything. And I was given it in such a way that I can explain it. And I think that if you're willing to open your mind, you will be able to understand me. And I'm excited about sharing that with you soon, too. But for now, I need to continue to focus on just recovering physically. But I'm doing amazing. I am doing better than anybody could have ever dreamed. And I will continue to recover. And I will begin again to communicate. And I want to thank you for staying with me, because we are one, and we are all reflections of God. And I look at you, I look at this world, and I see God, and I am in service to God. So I am your servant. I love you, every single one of you. Thank you for staying with me. And let's continue this amazing adventure.